My name is Rupert Goold, and I am the director of Judy.
Hi, and I'm Renee Zellweger, and I'm Judy.
And we are going to do a one-scene breakdown of when Renee and Judy sing By Myself.
Good luck. You know, the first time I sang on a stage, I was all of 2 years old. They say my papa had to come and drag me off after I started singing the same song for the 5th time. This is a moment where we're revealing the true circumstances of Judy's experience at the time, where she was fearful that she wouldn't have access to her instrument, and she wasn't sure how her performances were going to go and whether or not she was going to measure up to what had become people's pretty extraordinary expectations of her. Oh, seems we have a band here. We may as well put them to use.
For me, the whole drama of like, will she, won't she perform is like a big unknown in the film, and I wanted to draw it out as long as possible, both in the journey, but also, is she just going to talk all night? Is she going to make jokes?
I'll go my way by myself.
It's an interesting one because By Myself isn't like perhaps the most famous Judy Garland number, and it's not like The Man That Got Away or Get Happy. But what I love about it is she talks about being on her own and how difficult that is, but how she's going to conquer that. And that felt very kind of pertinent to the moment in the story when she's on her own away from her family. Renee's performance in this first lyric is really, really extraordinary. And so for a long time we actually just stayed in the tight, and that once the music has begun, it's like she's possessed by something that is gives her a whole different kind of movement quality. And even though that's partly in Renee's movement, but also in the camera movement, sort of suddenly feeling a little bit more lyrical, I suppose. We see so much performance on TV now. We see American Idol and The Voice and all these TV shows. And like, how are we going to make this different? And I said, if we can get the camera really close to the face, then that would be a really unusual thing to see.
Like a bird on the wing. This performance was sort of an amalgam of Rupert's vision in terms of the narrative and her own performance of this song. I'll build a world of my own. I kind of tried to learn it in the mirror in the dining room on my iPad. Kind of propped it up on the dining room table and looked in the mirror on the wall and tried to kind of remember how she moves the microphone and where and when and how she uses it for emphasis in different places.
Alec Guinness said something about like the way into a character is the shoes. Well, I always felt for you like the teeth. When the teeth went in, it was like a kind of, the character kind of popped in as well. I mean, how did they feel, the teeth?
They felt like a bit of a security blanket.
Yeah.
Just one more layer of something to hide behind.
What I would say about the mouth, though, is she is under the influence. The sort of slightly intoxicated quality really kind of was a liberating thing for the song. I remember thinking it would be really great if the supporting cast who were in the audience hadn't seen Renee at all, so that when she came out, they were experiencing Renee as Judy, sort of unknown. We had this most fantastic costume designer called Jani Tamim. She put so much detail into the costuming, and like these kind of jewelings around the top of the dress. To get in really close, you need all that detail and the earrings there as well, and she did a really great job, I think.
There were so many characteristics and qualities that were uniquely definable and distinguishable as Judy's own. It was just a matter of spending time with the legacy of her work and becoming familiar with those things, and suddenly they were in the room
on screen,
and on screen.
This was the kind of end of her TV period, and so there were loads of TV shows from that period in the 60s. Also the Judy tapes, those amazing audio recordings.
Oh, we did a deep dive into the internet. We were very greedily absorbing everything that we could. And boy, you can spend some days on YouTube. Yeah. And how lucky, because before there were things that were only in people's personal libraries.
The one thing that is really different between stage lighting and screen lighting is in stage lighting you do want these beams, like this big central beam you've got here, but you don't ever try and see sources. On film, that's what gives you your depth, all these little lights here. This is accurate in the sense that there were tables and seating in the original venue. On some of the other wider shots, back in this area, we added people, but these are all people who are really there.
This was the shape of the mic that she preferred, and the size for her little hand. And it was interesting because she's left-handed, and yet she held it in her right, but she would often pass it round on her back to her left hand. She liked the cord in her left hand, which is really interesting. A lot of that moving it around was actually wonderfully choreographed into the music, but it was really out of necessity so that she wouldn't step on it or fall down. There was this great power in her whipping that cord around, and sometimes it seemed like a security blanket for her because she was known for throwing that thing around like she was taming lions. And I get it. When we were finished, I missed having it in my hand.
In some ways it's dinner theatre, but really high-end dinner theatre. All of London society, swinging 60s London society, was in the theatre at the time, and so it was a sort of performance we don't really have anymore, a particular kind of milieu of society coming together. The really unusual thing about Talk of the Town, the venue that Judy performed in, is it had this sort of thrust stage, and it had tables all around the edge, so that gave it a sort of gladiatorial quality, and to try and recreate that was really hard because most theatres in Britain don't have that capacity. The original Talk of the Town is now a casino. This particular theatre is the Hackney Empire, and it allowed us to build this stage out, and that gives us different camera angles to come across the stage rather than to do everything one way. I really liked the reflection here we get in the floor, and I was sort of nervous we'd be able to get a focused atmosphere, but once we really kind of took the sides down and dark and had this lovely sort of central block of colour, that felt a lovely contrast. I felt like these great vocal performances she gives are a bit like that movie Free Solo about the guy who climbed up the rock face without any ropes, that they were sort of almost like an operatic aria. I was sort of influenced by Fred Astaire talking about how he filmed his choreography, and he never wanted to cut away to reactions because he felt that sort of subliminally, I guess the audience would know that there was a cheat there. And so I always wanted this performance to be, or the meat of it to be a single take, because the audience would know that Renee was really doing it for real, in the moment, in real time. I remember Renee's vocal coach saying, you know, you only get so many goes at this in a day because like this is a big vocal test. And I think that pressure gave it some of its intensity in a way.
I've never sung live in front of people like this before, so this was new. This was entirely new. Well, that's not true. Empire Records on the roof. No, actually, that might have been playback. Yeah, this would be the first time.
This was going to be a crane shot, but we literally on the day we got into the theatre, the full stage that the tables and the chairs were on wasn't strong enough to hold the weight of the crane. So we had this like panic. This is our big day to get our big performance shot, and our key camera we can't use. So this was shot on the stable eye, which is like a kind of Steadicam rig. What was going to be quite a precise camera movement became something a bit more improvised. But I think actually, weirdly, that slightly sort of floaty quality gives it some of its magic. And I just love what happens in Renee's eyes. Garland's eyes were very, very dark, and the first contact lenses we tried, which were accurate, were so dark that they felt like we couldn't get into your thoughts. And so we went a couple of shades lighter to get these pinpricks of light here and here. But that was a tricky thing, wasn't it? Because the show makeup was, you know, had to be accurate to the period, but yet the character is going through a very vulnerable moment. And I think Jeremy did a really lovely job with sort of something that is clearly dressed up for performance, but allows you into the thoughts as well.
Sometimes the contacts would go in with great ease, and sometimes they wouldn't at all, and there'd be a good 5 minutes of going, almost, not quite, almost.
What you don't know is quite how the light is going to bounce off the jewels in the moment, and so there's lots of lovely flecks of this kind of gorgeous amber light. The other two funny things about actually this shot were this ring of hers here kept clicking against the microphone in the recording because it's a live vocal, and we had to kind of work quite hard to kind of put our artificial version on, but get rid of it when we didn't want it.
I didn't know much about prosthetics before this, and I didn't really understand that once you put them on, they take on a life of their own, you know.
Renee's extension of nose, it just sort of begins like there, I think. And it's just one of the few moments where we had to do a tiny bit of post-production cleanup because we could see a tiny bit of the join.
As your skin starts to kind of sweat or try to breathe under the lights, that glue turns into this kind of like milky substance that starts to bubble out of what is supposed to be the seamless sort of join. It was an exciting mystery about when it was gonna make an appearance, wasn't it?
We rehearsed it quite a bit.
He wanted the emotion of the song not to be in my voice, but in my body completely. And so he had me sing while I was trying to push a piano around the room because he wanted the energy and the emphasis and the resistance of life to be palpable in the singing of the song. Like a bird on the wing. And I loved that you did that. It was
a heavy piano.
It didn't get very far in the room, but I got what you were trying to do. And then the other time where you had me kicking the chairs
around, yeah.
and throwing chairs on the moments of emphasis, just to get the emotion out and the anger that's in the sort of subtext of the performance.
There's a photo of Renee and I both like lying on the floor at the end of the week here on the black floor because we were so exhausted.
But there's so much joy in it, in the discovery and the experimentation. It was exciting when something worked.
Yeah, this.
Yeah.
This was electrifying. The things you talk about normally in acting, which is like, what do I want and what's the obstacle to getting what I want, apply as much to a song as well. And also just to give Renee like a map through it rather than just like one shape.
Yeah, to ground control. It's giving me points to know where we're going next and where the next turn was emotionally. It was a very nice template and wonderful parameters to kind of dance inside of. So it was very cool. Theater director. Awesome.